This is BBC News with David Eads and Anita McVeigh.
A major attack in the French city of Nice. 84 people killed, many more injured.
Hello, this is BBC News with continuing coverage of the France truck attack in Nice.
We know at least 84 people have been killed in Nice after the lorry ploughed into crowds watching Bastille Day celebrations late last night. And in just the last hour, the French Prime Minister, Manuel Valls, has declared 3 days of national mourning. He said France had been hit in its soul on its national day.
The attack happened at around 11 p.m. local time.
President Hollande said he deplored what he called a terrorist attack, and he announced an extension of the national state of emergency for a further 3 months. Jane Francis Kelly has this report.
We're just seeing a comment from the French National Front leader, Marine Le Pen, saying on her party's website in response to this attack in Nice that the war against Islamist fundamentalism must begin. That is a quote from Marine Le Pen. And if you saw just a few minutes ago our interview with a politics professor, someone who specialises in French politics.
Well, let's just get a sense as to what did happen in Nice last night, because we're joined by Nader El Shafei, who saw the attack happen. He joins us on the line from Nice. And thank you very much for joining us, Nader. Just tell us what you did see.
Thank you.
And we can talk now to James Nash, who was also near the scene of the attack. James, thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Just a quick line, really. Obviously, you won't be surprised. There's a major jazz festival takes place in Nice this weekend, in theory. That, of course, has been cancelled, as have pretty much all the cultural festivities for the time being.
Well, we're joined now by our security correspondent, Frank Gardner. Frank, it's not the first time that vehicles have been driven at pedestrians, but this, it seems to me, is unprecedented.
This is on a totally different scale. I mean, what you're referring to there was an incident in Dijon in central France in December 2014 when a man who had psychiatric problems drove into pedestrians. Yeah, and of course the extension of the national state of emergency, which was due to be finished this weekend, that's now going to go on for another 3 months. I mean, France, of course...
Is that really effective?
Well, it obviously hasn't been, because it hasn't stopped this. It puts more troops on the streets, it gets people on their guard, but no, it's never going to be completely effective.
Well, President Hollande said precisely that, in fact, this morning, that for both Syria and Iraq, that their efforts would be increased. Frank, thanks very much indeed, Frank Gardner.
Just briefly to tell you a line I'm seeing on the AP news agency, we don't have confirmation on these figures, but it is quoting the Children's Hospital in Nice, saying it has treated some 50 children and adolescents injured in this truck attack, including 2 who died during or after surgery.
You're watching BBC News. Let me just remind you of the main developments on the breaking news in the last few hours. France has declared 3 days of national mourning for the 84 victims of what's believed to have been a terror attack in the southern French city of Nice. A lorry ploughed into huge crowds as they enjoyed celebrations on the country's national Bastille Day. As we're just hearing, children are among the dead. President Hollande has been holding an urgent security meeting at the Élysée Palace. He extended the country's state of emergency for a further 3 months. The plans are in place for the mobilisation of up to 10,000 military and police reservists.
While announcing those 3 days of national mourning for the victims of the attack, the French Prime Minister Manuel Valls said France had to learn to live with terrorism, but that it would not allow itself to be destabilised by the violence. This is what he said earlier.
Well, that's Manuel Valls, the French Prime Minister. Just had a few words coming from the Belgian Prime Minister as well. Of course, following on from the March Belgian airport attack, the attack at Zaventem in Brussels. This is Charles Michel, the French ambassador to London, Sylvie Bermond, just stressing that the attack in Nice was, for her, an attack on the symbolism of liberté, égalité.
Our correspondent, Helena Lee, is outside the French embassy in central London for us. And Helena, thank you for that. Helena Lee outside the French embassy.
In fact, we can go from the French embassy to Downing Street. Let's just have a look at the scene in Downing Street at the moment.
Well, witnesses have been telling us how the events unfolded in Nice last night. The BBC's Roy Calley described how people reacted when it became apparent that an attack was taking place.
Of course, this appalling incident happened barely 12 hours ago, so still far too early in the investigation to say exactly what happened. The president, though, François Hollande, has described the attack as having undeniably the characteristics of terrorism, and the French Prime Minister repeated just a couple of hours ago that his country is facing what he called a war which terrorism has brought us.
Over the past 2 years, France has, of course, suffered a series of Islamist militant attacks. In January 2015, gunmen opened fire at the offices of the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo.
Yeah, a Jewish supermarket was later attacked. 20 people died in those two incidents. And in June of last year, one man was beheaded by a militant who then tried unsuccessfully to blow up a gas plant at Saint-Quentin-Fallavier.
And then last November, attacks took place in Paris. 130 people died in a series of gun and bomb attacks across the city. And just a month ago, an off-duty police officer and his wife were stabbed to death at their home in a Parisian suburb to the west of the capital.
Well, on the line now is Catherine Guillardi, who's a producer at Radio France, not in the French capital. B, it is essentially an unprecedented manner of attack, isn't it? We're keeping across developments for you here on BBC News.